I didn't just walk into the Alpha's recovery room. I broke in. I shoved past a beta who outweighs me by 80 pounds because 3 weeks is too long to be polite. And frankly, patience is a virtue I stopped practicing the day my mate ended up in a coma. That was my mistake. My reckless, desperate, arrogant mistake. I thought the danger was over because his heart was beating. I didn't realize that while his heart was still beating for me, his head had already packed up and moved out. I walked in expecting a movie star reunion, tears, kissing, maybe a little inappropriate groping in front of the nurses. Instead, I got a funeral for a marriage I didn't know was dead. He looked at me, and for the first time in 3 years, the room didn't get warmer, it got freezing cold. Welcome back to Eliana's Romance Library, your sanctuary for the fiercest alphas and the love stories that bring them to their knees. Before we dive into today's emotional roller coaster, I want to see just how far our pack extends. We are building a global family here, so take a second, head down to the comments, and let me know. Where in the world are you listening from today? I love seeing your cities and flags pop up. Now grab your headphones and get comfortable. Let's find out if love is stronger than memory. Chapter 1. The Blank Slate. Move, Colt, or I will accidentally shift and bite you in a very sensitive area. And explaining that to the pack healers will be embarrassing for both of us. Colt, the beta of the Crescent Vale pack and currently the most annoying obstacle in my life, held his ground in front of the sterile white door. He looked exhausted, the dark circles under his eyes competing with the grim set of his jaw. But he didn't budge. "Sarah, listen to me," he started, using that patronizing, calm-down female voice that usually resulted in me throwing a stapler at his head. The doctor said low stimulation. He just woke up. His brain patterns are fragile. Fragile? Cade? I laughed, a sharp, jagged sound that scraped my throat. The man eats raw venison and jumps off cliffs for fun. He's not a porcelain doll, he's my mate. 3 weeks, Colt. I have been staring at a wall for 3 weeks while you all played gatekeeper. I am going in there. Sarah. I didn't wait for his permission. I did what I do best. I improvised. I feinted left, dropped my shoulder, and when he shifted to block me, I ducked under his massive arm and slammed my hip into the door handle. It gave way with a satisfying click. My reckless choice. I should have listened. I should have waited for the briefing, the pamphlet, the "So Your Husband Has Reset to Factory Settings" support group. But I didn't. I barged in like I owned the place. Because I did. I owned the heart of the man in that bed. Or so I thought. The room smelled of antiseptic and lemon floor cleaner, masking the underlying scent of wolf, cedar, rain, and the deep, earthy musk that usually made my knees weak. Cade was sitting up. That was the first shock. He wasn't hooked up to a dozen machines anymore. He was propped up against a mountain of pillows, looking annoyingly good for someone who had just napped through the better part of a month. His dark hair was messy, falling over his forehead in that way that usually meant I was about to run my fingers through it. He was laughing. Actually laughing. He was looking at his mother, Wren, who was peeling an orange in the corner chair. "I'm telling you, Mom," Cade said, his voice raspy but strong. "I feel fine. A headache, sure, but I've had worse hangovers after Colt's birthday parties." Wren chuckled, handing him a slice. "Don't joke, Cade. You scared us." "I'm an alpha," he grinned, that crooked, arrogant grin that made me fall in love with him when I was 21. "We don't get scared, we just get annoyed." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. He was okay. He was him. The charm, the ego, the voice. It was all there. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 21 days. "Well," I said, leaning against the doorframe, trying to look cool despite the fact that I was shaking. "Nice to see you haven't lost your inflated sense of self-importance while you were sleeping. Sleeping Beauty." The air in the room didn't just shift. It vanished. Wren froze, the orange peel slipping from her fingers. Thorn, Cade's father, who had been standing by the window, stiffened like he'd sensed a predator. But it was Cade's reaction that stopped my heart. He didn't smile. He didn't light up. He didn't say, "Sarah, get over here." He stopped chewing the orange slice. He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes, those intense, stormy gray eyes that knew every inch of my body, every secret I'd ever whispered, swept over me. They didn't linger on my lips. They didn't soften. They assessed me, calculated me, like I was a threat. Or worse, like I was a delivery driver who had walked into the wrong house. "Colt," Cade said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't the warm rasp from a second ago. It was the command tone, the alpha tone. I thought I said family only. I blinked, the smile sliding off my face like oil. Very funny, Cade. Hilarious. You get hit on the head and suddenly you're a comedian. Are you going to ask me what year it is next? Cade didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He looked past me, toward Colt, who was hovering in the doorway behind me with a look of pure sickness on his face. "Who is this?" Cade asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I took a step forward, my hands trembling. "Stop it. You're scaring your mother." "I asked a question," Cade said, his gaze snapping back to me. It was cold, so incredibly cold. "Who are you, and why do you smell like you've been rolling in my clothes?" My stomach dropped through the floor. I felt bile rise in my throat. "Cade, it's me. It's Sarah." He stared at me. Blank. Empty. "Sarah," he repeated, tasting the name like it was a foreign word. "I don't know a Sarah." "We've been mated for 3 years," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a terrifying cold dread. "We live together. You memorize my coffee order. You hate it when I drive the truck. You sing off-key in the shower." I reached for the bed rail, needing to anchor myself. Cade recoiled. He physically pulled back, pressing himself into the pillows to get away from my hand. The rejection was visceral. It was a slap in the face without the contact. "I don't know you," he said, the words clear, precise, and absolute. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and humiliating. "Cade, please! I don't know you!" he shouted, the monitor beside him spiking. But as he shouted, as his human mind rejected me with absolute certainty, something else happened. His eyes flashed. For a split second, the stormy gray was swallowed by a brilliant, molten gold. His wolf. His nostrils flared, inhaling deeply, pulling in the scent he was complaining about. His hand, the one resting on the white sheet, twitched. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the fabric, his body straining toward me even as he pushed himself away. A low, vibrating growl started in his chest. It wasn't a growl of aggression. It was a growl of need. "Get her out!" Cade gritted out through clenched teeth, clutching his head as if splitting in two. "Get her out of here! She smells like mine, but I have no idea who the hell she is." Chapter 2. The Intruder in the House. Being escorted out of my own husband's hospital room by the beta I've known since kindergarten was a new low. Colt didn't physically drag me, but the "please don't make a scene" look in his eyes was heavy enough to push me into the hallway. I stood there, staring at the closed door, listening to the muffled sounds of Cade asking for water, asking for his dad, asking for a status report on the patrols. He was asking for everything except me. The drive back to the Alpha house was silent. Colt drove like he was transporting a bomb that might explode if he hit a pothole. When we pulled up to the house, our house, the sprawling timber and glass estate Cade and I had renovated 2 years ago, I reached for the door handle, ready to storm upstairs and drown my sorrows in Cade's pillow. "Sarah," Colt said, locking the doors before I could escape. He winced, looking at the steering wheel. "Thorn and Wren think it's best if you stay in the East Wing guest suite. Just for now." I froze. The East Wing? That's on the opposite side of the house from the master suite. It's practically in a different zip code. The doctor said familiar things will help, but too much dissonance might trigger a setback, Colt recited, clearly parroting a medical professional who had never met a stubborn she-wolf. He remembers the room being his. He doesn't remember sharing it. If he walks in and sees your perfume, your clothes, your everything, it might agitate the wolf. Agitate the wolf? I snapped. His wolf is the only part of him that actually likes me right now? And that's the problem, Colt said softly. His mind and his beast are at war. If we push him too hard, he might snap. Just give him space. Let him come to you. Let him come to me. The man didn't remember my name. If I waited for him to come to me, I'd be waiting until the next ice age. But I was outnumbered, outranked, and exhausted, so I nodded, got out of the truck, and walked into my own home like a visitor. I spent the next 3 hours moving the essentials from the master suite to the guest room while the house was empty. It was degrading. I grabbed my toothbrush, my favorite hoodies, the book I was reading. Every item I removed felt like I was erasing myself from his life, doing the amnesia's work for it. When I heard the front door open downstairs, I froze. He was home. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar guest bed, straining my ears. Wolf hearing is a blessing and a curse. I could hear his boots thudding against the hardwood floor. I could hear the heavy intake of his breath. It smells wrong in here. Cade's voice drifted up the stairs. He sounded irritated. The cleaners just came yesterday, Wren's soothing voice replied. It's just lemon polish, Cade. No, he growled. The sound vibrated through the floorboards and straight into my chest. It's empty. It feels sterile. Why does the air feel so thin? My heart gave a traitorous little leap. Because I'm not in the room, you idiot. You're just tired, son, Thorne said. Go upstairs, rest. I listened as he climbed the stairs. He paused on the landing. To the left was the master suite. To the right, down the long hall, was me. I held my breath, waiting. Turn right. Follow the pull. Come find me. I heard him sniff the air. A deep, loud inhale. There it is again, Cade muttered, his voice dripping with frustration. That scent, vanilla and rain. It's fainter here, but it's annoying. It's like a ghost. That's Sarah's scent, Colt said quietly. Well, tell her to stop spraying it on the walls, Cade snapped. It's making my skin itch. I feel like I need to hunt. He turned left. The door to the master suite slammed shut. I let out a breath and fell back onto the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't coming. He felt the void I left behind. He felt the itch of the bond, but his broken brain was interpreting it as irritation. He didn't want to hold me. He wanted to hunt me because I was a variable he couldn't solve. I lay there for hours listening to him pace. And he did pace, back and forth in our bedroom. I knew that walk. It was his thinking walk. 3 steps, turn. 3 steps, turn. He was restless. Around midnight, I finally got thirsty enough to brave the common areas. I crept downstairs, trying to be quiet, though in a house full of shifters, stealth is mostly a suggestion. I walked into the kitchen, craving nothing but cold water and maybe a violent scream into a pillow. I stopped dead in the doorway. The lights were on, and someone was standing at the massive granite island. But it wasn't Cade. It was Mira, Cade's childhood best friend, the woman who had made it very clear 3 years ago that she thought she would be the future Luna. She was wearing a silk robe that I was 90% sure she hadn't brought with her. She was humming, casually leaning against the counter, brewing a pot of coffee. Not just any coffee. The specific dark roast blend Cade imported from Colombia. The one he only drank in the mornings. She turned when she heard me, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was sharp, predatory, and entirely too comfortable. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Hey, Sarah, I didn't think you'd be up. I was just making Cade a fresh pot. He's having trouble sleeping. She reached into the cupboard, my cupboard, and pulled out Cade's favorite mug, the black one with the chipped rim. He texted me, she added, shrugging lightly. said he needed a familiar face. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Familiar, because I was a stranger, and she was a memory he actually kept. Chapter 3. The Vulture. Put the mug down, Mira. My voice was calm, scary calm, the kind of calm that usually precedes a hurricane. Mira paused, the coffee pot hovering over Cade's favorite mug. She tilted her head, her blonde ponytail swishing over her shoulder. She looked immaculate, of course. While I was wearing oversized sweatpants and a tank top with a stain on the hem, she looked like she was ready for a photo shoot. "I'm just helping," she said, pouring the dark liquid. The smell filled the kitchen, rich, earthy, and painfully familiar. It was the smell of my mornings for the last 1,000 days. "He's confused, Sarah. He needs people he trusts around him right now. He remembers me. We have history. You have to admit it's comforting for him." "History?" I scoffed, walking fully into the kitchen. "You haven't spoken to him in 2 years because you couldn't handle the fact that he chose me. That's not history. That's a grudge." Mira's smile tightened at the edges. She set the pot down and leaned her hip against the counter, crossing her arms. Maybe the moon goddess works in mysterious ways. It's tragic, really, the accident. But isn't it interesting? He forgot you, just you. Maybe his wolf is trying to tell him something. Maybe this is a second chance to get things right. The audacity was so breathtaking, I almost respected it. Almost. "You think brain damage is a sign from the goddess?" I asked, stepping into her personal space. I was shorter than her, but I was an alpha's mate. I knew how to project power. "You're circling him like a vulture, Mira. He's vulnerable, so you're swooping in with coffee and nostalgia, hoping he won't notice that you're the same person he rejected when his brain was working perfectly." Mira's eyes narrowed into slits. "He didn't reject me tonight. He asked me to come down here. He laughed with me. He looks at me and sees a friend. He looks at you and sees a headache." That stung. It landed right in the center of my chest, exactly where she aimed it. "He's confused," I whispered, though my voice wavered. "Is he?" Mira stepped closer, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Or is he finally free? You were always a lot, Sarah. Intense, difficult. Cade needs peace. He needs a Luna who supports him, not one who challenges him every step of the way. Maybe he forgot you because he wanted to." I stared at her. For a second, just a split second, I believed her. The insecurity that had been gnawing at me since the hospital surged up. Maybe I was too difficult. Maybe I was too loud, too fierce, too much. Maybe Cade was relieved to wake up to a blank slate. I looked down at my hands. I could leave. I could pack a bag, go stay at my sister Ivy's place. Let him have his peace. Let him have his familiar life with Mira. It would be the noble thing to do. Then I heard it. A thump from upstairs. A heavy sigh. The sound of Cade moving around in the room directly above us. My wolf bristled under my skin. Mine? No. Noble was boring. And I wasn't the kind of woman who walked away just because things got hard. I was the woman who stood back to back with him during pack disputes. I was the woman who held him when his grandfather died. I was the woman he chose. If he forgot that, then it was my job to remind him. Not by crying, not by leaving, but by being exactly who I was. I looked up at Mira. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp fire. "You're right," I said. Mira blinked, surprised. "I am?" "He does need peace," I said, snatching the mug of coffee from the counter before she could pick it up. "But he's not going to get it from you." "Excuse me? That's for Cade." "I know," I said, taking a sip. It burned my tongue, but I didn't flinch. "I'll take it to him." "He asked for me," Mira hissed, her composure cracking. "He asked for a familiar face," I corrected. "He's going to get his wife." I turned my back on her, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her mouth open, and marched out of the room. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my steps were steady. I walked up the stairs. I walked past the guest room. I walked straight to the master suite. The door was ajar. I didn't knock. I pushed it open with my shoulder. Cade was sitting in the armchair by the window, staring out at the moonlight. He was shirtless, sweat glistening on his skin despite the cool air. He looked tormented. He snapped his head toward me as I entered. His eyes widened, then narrowed. "I thought I heard Mira," he said, his voice rough. "Mira is retired for the evening." I lied smoothly. I walked across the room, the distance feeling like miles. I stopped in front of him. He looked up at me, that same cold, calculating look from the hospital. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't cry. I held out the mug. "Coffee," I said. "Colombian dark roast, 2 sugars, no cream. Just how you like it." He stared at the mug, then at me. He didn't take it. "I told you," he said, his voice hard. "I don't know you." I set the mug down on the small table beside him with a deliberate clink. Then I stood to my full height. I didn't try to touch him. I didn't try to evoke a memory. I simply looked him dead in the eye, letting him see the fire he used to love. "That's fine," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the tension in the room. "You don't know me?" "Then we start over. I'm not going anywhere, Cade. I'm not a ghost, and I'm not a memory." I extended my hand toward him, palm open. A business introduction. A challenge. "I'm Sarah," I said. "I'm the best fighter in your pack. I'm the only one who isn't afraid of you. And I'm your mate. Nice to meet you, Alpha." Cade stared at my hand. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. His nostrils flared. He looked at my hand, then up at my face, confused by the sudden shift from weeping victim to confident challenger. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out. His skin brushed mine. Sparks, literal electric static, snapped between our palms. He gasped, jerking his hand back as if he'd been burned, his eyes flashing that brilliant, undeniable gold again. He looked at his hand, then at me, horror and fascination warring in his gaze. "What?" he whispered. "Was that?" Chapter 4. The Introduction. "Static electricity," Cade had muttered, staring at his hand like it had grown a second thumb. "The air is dry. It's just static." He had dismissed me from the bedroom 30 seconds later, retreating into his fortress of solitude and denial. But I saw the way he rubbed his palm against his jeans, as if the sensation of my skin was a brand he couldn't scrub off. The next morning, I decided to dial up the voltage. If Cade wanted to pretend I was a stranger, I would be the most impressive stranger he'd ever met. I traded my grief-stricken sweatpants for my combat gear. High-compression leggings, a sports bra that offered maximum support and minimum coverage, and my hand wraps. I headed to the training grounds. The Crescent Vale training pits were essentially a glorified mud pit surrounded by high-tech gym equipment. It was where the pack rank was established, egos were bruised, and noses were occasionally broken. It was Cade's church. He was already there, of course. He stood on the raised platform, arms crossed over his chest, looking like a statue carved out of granite and bad attitude. He was watching the sentinels run drills, barking corrections that were annoyingly accurate. "Keep your guard up, Miller. You're protecting your face, but your ribs are open for a buffet." I didn't wave. I didn't walk up to the platform to ask for permission. I walked straight into the sparring circle, where Jax, a linebacker-sized enforcer, was taking a water break. "Hey, Jax," I said, tightening my wraps. "You look bored. Want to dance?" Jax blinked, looking from me to Cade on the platform. Sarah, I don't think..." "Scared I'll ruin your pretty face?" I smirked. That did it. Shifter males have the emotional maturity of golden retrievers. Challenge their dominance and they can't help themselves. Jax dropped his water bottle and stepped into the ring. "Don't cry to the alpha when I toss you," Jax grunted. "Less talking, more bleeding," I quipped. I didn't wait for a signal. I launched. Fighting is the only time my brain shuts up. It's rhythm and geometry. Jack swung a haymaker that could have taken my head off. I ducked, the wind of his fist ruffling my hair, and pivoted. I didn't try to overpower him. He had 100 pounds on me. I used gravity. I swept his leg, hooked my arm around his thick neck, and used his own momentum to flip him. He hit the dirt with a bone-rattling thud. Before he could scramble up, I had my knee on his chest and my forearm pressed against his throat. "Dead," I whispered. Jax tapped my arm, wheezing. I let him up, grinning. "Good warm-up. Who's next?" The training yard had gone quiet. I wiped sweat from my forehead and looked up toward the platform. Cade was staring. He wasn't looking at me with the cold, blank expression from the hospital. He was leaning over the railing, his grip on the metal bar tight enough to bend it. His eyes were tracking the sweat rolling down my neck, the rise and fall of my chest. There was calculation there. Yes, assessing my form, my speed. But there was something else. A hunger. He walked down the stairs, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. He stopped at the edge of the ring. "Your form is sloppy on the dismount," he said. His voice was flat, but I saw the pulse jumping in his jaw. "Worked on Jax," I countered, breathing hard. "Jax fights like a drunk bear," Cade dismissed, not taking his eyes off me. "You overextended your right side. A faster opponent would have gutted you." "Like you?" I challenged. A muscle ticked under his eye. "I'm not going to fight you." "Why? Afraid you'll remember something?" He flinched. The barb landed. He stepped closer, invading my space. The scent of him, sandalwood and pure power, washed over me, making my inner wolf howl like a banshee. "You fight like an Alpha-trained soldier," he murmured, almost to himself. "Who taught you that sweep?" "That's my move." "A very stubborn man taught me," I said softly, holding his gaze. "He told me that being small means being fast. He told me to be the weapon he never has to worry about." Cade stared at me, the cognitive dissonance practically visible on his face. He admired the fighter, but he couldn't place the woman. He looked down at his pocket, his hand twitching toward his phone. It was a reflex. I knew exactly what he was doing. Whenever he saw a promising new recruit or something impressive, he'd text me. "Babe, you should see this fighter." He pulled his phone halfway out, his thumb hovering over the screen before he froze. He realized he had nobody to text, because the person he wanted to tell was standing right in front of him. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, his expression hardening into a mask of frustration. "Clean up your footwork, Sarah, you're leaving openings." He turned and walked away, but not before I saw him rub his chest, right over his heart, as if it was aching. Chapter 5. The Scent of Her. If the training ground was a victory, the strategy meeting was purgatory. Thorne had called the senior members of the pack to the war room to discuss the rogue activity. As the Alpha's son and future leader, Cade was leading it. As his mate, allegedly, I was required to be there. The universe, in its infinite cruelty, decided there were only enough chairs for us to sit directly next to each other. The room was small, air-conditioned, and sealed tight, which meant the air circulation was recycling the same scents over and over again. I had showered after training, and I made a choice. A petty, calculated choice. I doused myself in the perfume Cade had bought me for our first anniversary, Midnight Rain. It was a blend of vanilla, ozone, and something floral that Cade used to bury his face in for hours. We were 20 minutes into a discussion about perimeter patrols, and Cade looked like he was being exercised. He was shifting in his leather chair constantly. His leg was bouncing under the table, his knee occasionally brushing against mine. Every time we touched, he jolted as if I'd shocked him with a cattle prod. "The northern sector it's vulnerable," Cade said, pointing at the topographic map on the table. But his voice sounded thick, distracted. "Actually," I said, leaning forward. I purposely leaned across him to point at the map, my arm brushing his chest, my hair falling near his face. "The ravine here is flooded. They can't cross it. We should focus on the ridge." Cade stopped breathing, I could hear his heart rate on the monitor of my own ears. Thump, 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 fast, erratic. He turned his head toward me. We were inches apart. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the gray irises. He wasn't looking at the map. He was inhaling. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice so low only I could hear. "Strategy, Cade. It's what we do here." "You smell..." He trailed off, his jaw clenching. "You smell like a trap." "I smell like vanilla," I corrected, looking at his lips. "Does it bother you?" "It's distracting," he growled. "I can't think." "Maybe you're thinking about the wrong things?" He slammed his hand down on the table, making everyone jump. "Meeting adjourned," Cade barked, standing up abruptly. "Colt, finalize the roster. I need air." He didn't wait for a dismissal. He stormed out of the room. I didn't let him run this time. I followed him. I caught up to him in the narrow corridor leading to the armory. "Cade, stop running away." He spun around so fast I almost crashed into him. He grabbed my shoulders, pinning me against the concrete wall. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. "Stop it," he commanded, his face inches from mine. His hands were burning through my shirt. "Stop playing games." "I'm not playing games." "Then what is this?" he demanded, shaking me slightly. "Why does my head feel like it's splitting open every time you're near me? Why does my wolf want to rip my skin off to get to you? You're using something, pheromones, some kind of trick." "It's not a trick, you idiot," I yelled back, grabbing his wrists. "It's biology. We are mates. Your brain is broken, but your body isn't. Your body knows exactly who I am." He stared at me, his chest heaving. The anger in his eyes was warring with a lust so potent it made the air thick. He looked at my mouth. He wanted to kiss me. I could see the battle losing ground in his eyes. "I don't know you," he whispered, but it sounded like a plea, like he was begging me to explain why he wanted to devour a stranger. "You do," I whispered back, leaning up. "You know me, Cade. You're just afraid to admit it." He released me abruptly, backing away as if I were radioactive. "Stay away from me," he warned, though his voice lacked any real bite. "I mean it, Sarah. Stay out of my way." He turned and walked off, but I noticed something. He was walking with a slight limp, the way he always did when he was overwhelmingly aroused and trying to hide it. Chapter 6. The Jealousy Reflex. I should have listened to him. I should have stayed away. But hunger is a primal motivator, and I missed lunch because Cade decided to have a panic attack in the hallway. I walked into the mess hall an hour later. It was loud, chaotic, and smelled of roast beef. The noise was comforting. It was normal. I grabbed a tray and scanned the room. Cade wasn't there. Good. I spotted Colt sitting at a corner table. Poor Colt. He looked like he'd been through a war zone trying to mediate between Cade's amnesia and my stubbornness. I slid into the bench opposite him. "You look terrible," I told him, stabbing a potato. "You look like trouble," Colt retorted, though he offered me a tired smile. "How was the meeting? I heard Cade stormed out." "He has performance anxiety," I joked, though my heart wasn't in it. "He thinks I'm a witch who cast a spell on his libido." Colt chuckled, shaking his head. "He's confused, Sarah. Give him time." He reached across the table and squeezed my shoulder. It was a brotherly gesture. Colt and I had been friends for years. He was the one who helped me pick out Cade's birthday gifts. "We're going to fix this. I promise." I sighed, leaning into his touch, grateful for the anchor. "Thanks, Colt. I miss him." "I know." Colt rubbed my back soothingly. Bang. The double doors of the mess hall flew open. Cade stood there. He had showered and changed, but he looked even more unhinged than before. His eyes scanned the room, hunting. They landed on Colt's hand, on my shoulder. The change was instantaneous. Cade didn't walk, he blurred. 1 second he was at the door, The next, he was across the room. He didn't speak. He didn't ask what was happening. He let out a snarl that silenced the entire cafeteria. He grabbed Colt by the back of his tactical vest and ripped him out of the seat. "Cade!" I screamed, standing up. Cade shoved Colt backward. Colt hit the wall with a sickening crunch, sliding down to the floor, looking completely bewildered. "Don't touch her!" Cade roared. The sound wasn't human. It was pure, unfiltered alpha aggression. His canines were fully extended, his eyes glowing that terrifying gold. The room was deadly silent. 50 wolves were staring at their alpha, who had just assaulted his own beta for comforting a woman he claimed not to know. Cade stood over Colt, his chest heaving, his fists clenched so hard blood was dripping from where his nails bit into his palms. He looked ready to kill. Then, the red haze seemed to clear. Cade blinked. He looked down at Colt, who was rubbing his bruised shoulder. He looked at me. I was staring at him in horror, not because I was scared of him, but because I saw the terror in his eyes. He looked at his own hands shaking violently. He realized what he had done. He had lost control. He had attacked his best friend over a jealousy he had no right to feel. Cade choked out, backing away. He looked at me one last time, his expression crumbling from rage to utter panic. He turned and bolted from the hall, leaving silence and a very confused pack in his wake. Chapter 7. The Memory Fragment. The cafeteria was still ringing with the silence Cade had left behind. Colt was sitting on the floor, rubbing his jaw, looking more confused than injured. "I'm fine," Colt groaned as I knelt beside him, checking his pupils. "He pulls his punches. If he wanted to hurt me, my head would be in the soup tureen." "He's losing it," I whispered, helping Colt to his feet. "He attacked you. You're his brother in everything but blood." "He attacked a threat," Colt corrected, dusting off his tactical vest. "A threat to you. That wasn't Cade, Sarah. That was pure instinct. The man doesn't know you, but the wolf is ready to burn the world down to keep you safe." He looked at the exit where Cade had vanished. "Go find him." I didn't need to track him. I didn't need to sniff the air or follow footprints in the dirt. I knew exactly where he went when the noise in his head got too loud. The Overlook. It was a jagged outcropping of granite on the northern edge of the territory, overlooking the valley where the river cut through the pines. It was dangerous, isolated, and silent. It was where he took me on our third date. It was where he proposed. I hiked up the trail, my boots crunching on pine needles. The wind picked up the higher I climbed, whipping my hair across my face. My heart was heavy, a lead weight in my chest. Seeing him lose control like that wasn't a victory. It was terrifying. He was fracturing. I found him standing on the edge of the precipice, staring down at the river hundreds of feet below. His shoulders were hunched, his hands gripping the railing so hard the metal was groaning under the pressure. He didn't turn when I approached. "I could hear you coming from a mile away," he said, his voice flat, devoid of the rage from the mess hall. "You have a heavy step for a female." "And you have a terrible right hook for an alpha," I retorted, stepping up beside him. I didn't touch him, I knew better now. "Colt is fine, by the way. His ego is bruised, but his face is still pretty." Cade let out a breath that was half sigh, half growl. "I didn't mean to." "I know." I looked at him, and I just saw red. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes tortured. "I wanted to tear his throat out, because he touched your shoulder. That is insanity, Sarah. I am losing my mind." "You're not losing your mind," I said softly. "You're fighting your soul. You can't win that fight, Cade." I leaned against the railing, looking out at the moon reflecting off the water. Without thinking, I started to hum. It was unconscious, a habit born of 1,000 nights spent on this exact cliff. It was a lullaby his mother used to sing, one he had taught me to hum when he couldn't sleep. A simple, haunting melody. Cade froze. I saw his hands spasm on the railing. He squeezed his eyes shut, a hiss of pain escaping his teeth. "Stop," he whispered. "It's just a song," I said, continuing the melody, letting the notes drift on the wind. "I said stop!" Cade roared, spinning around. He clutched his temples, his face contorted in agony. "What are you doing to me?" "Cade?" I stepped forward, alarmed. This wasn't anger. This was physical pain. It's like a knife," he gasped, falling to his knees. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. "I see rain. I see blue silk. I hear you laughing, but it's too loud. It hurts. Make it stop." My heart slammed against my ribs. Blue silk. I was wearing a blue silk dress the night he proposed here. It was raining. "Let it in, Cade," I urged, dropping to my knees in front of him. I reached out, hovering my hands over his shoulders. "Don't fight it. It's a memory. It's us." "It's not a memory," he yelled, lashing out blindly. His arm caught mine, shoving me back hard. I skidded in the dirt but kept my balance. "It's noise. It's static. You're haunting me, Sarah. Every time I look at you, every time I hear you, my head feels like it's being split open with an axe." He looked up at me and his eyes were wet, not with tears of sentiment, but with the sheer exhaustion of pain. "I can't do this," he choked out. "I can't be the man you want. I don't know him, and trying to find him is killing me." "I don't want the old man," I said fiercely, my voice cracking. "I want you, the you that is right here on your knees fighting for control. That's the man I love." "Well, I don't love you," he spat. The words were a defensive weapon, meant to drive me away, meant to stop the pain in his head. "I don't know you. You are a stranger who smells like home, and I hate it. Leave me alone." He scrambled to his feet, swaying slightly, and turned his back on me. "Go away, Sarah, before I hurt you too." I stood there, wind-blown and aching, watching his broad back as he stared into the dark abyss. He wanted me to leave. He wanted the easy silence of oblivion. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered to the wind. "Hauntings don't end just because you close your eyes." Chapter 8. The Second First Date. If there is a hell, it is likely a formal event where you have to pretend to be a happily mated couple with a man who looked at you 3 hours ago, like he wanted to push you off a cliff. Thorne, in his infinite alpha wisdom, decided that the incident in the mess hall required immediate damage control. The rumors were flying. The alpha is unstable. The bond is broken. The pack is vulnerable. To counter this, he ordered Cade and me to attend the annual pack gala, together, smiling. "We look like a hostage video waiting to happen," I muttered, staring at myself in the full-length mirror of the guest room. I had pulled out the heavy artillery, the red dress. It was a floor-length slip of crimson satin with a slit that went up to my hip and a back that plunged dangerously low. It was the dress I wore when I wanted Cade to lose the ability to speak. I walked down the grand staircase, my heels clicking on the marble. Cade was waiting at the bottom. He was wearing a black tuxedo tailored to fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He was adjusting his cufflinks, looking annoyed, until he heard my footsteps. He looked up. His hands froze on his cuffs. His mouth didn't drop open, he was too disciplined for that, but his eyes flared. He raked his gaze from my heels, up the slit of the dress, over the curve of my waist, to my eyes. He swallowed hard. I saw the muscles in his throat work. "Red," he said. It wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. "It's my color," I replied breezily, stepping off the last step to stand toe-to-toe with him. "Try not to drool, Alpha. It ruins the terrifying reputation." "I'm not drooling," he grumbled, offering me his arm. "I'm contemplating how much trouble that slit is going to cause me tonight. Worried I'll trip? Worried every unmated male in the room is going to be staring at your legs, and I'm going to have to punch someone else." I felt a thrill shoot through me. "Possessive much? I thought you didn't know me." "I don't," he said, guiding me toward the door. "But I know what belongs to me." The gala was in the main assembly hall, draped in fairy lights and filled with the entire upper echelon of the pack. When we walked in, the music faltered. All eyes turned to us. Cade didn't hesitate. He pulled me closer, his hand settling on the small of my back. His skin burned through the thin satin. It was a performance for the pack, but his grip was tight, possessive. "Smile," he murmured against my ear. "Pretend you like me." "I do like you," I whispered back. "I just don't like the amnesia." He let out a short, surprised huff of air. A laugh. "Fair enough." We circulated. We shook hands. We played the part. And strangely, as the champagne flowed, the tension began to bleed away. Cade was charming. He was witty. He introduced me to visiting dignitaries with a hand firmly on my waist. "Dance with me," he said suddenly. That wasn't an order, I noted. It was a request, a strong one. He led me to the dance floor. The music was slow, a heavy cello melody. He pulled me flush against him, one hand clasping mine, the other splayed wide on my back. We moved together. It was effortless. My body knew his body knew mine. The steps were muscle memory. "You're a good dancer," he murmured, looking down at me. "I expected you to lead." "I only lead when you're being an idiot," I said, tilting my head back. He chuckled again. That sound, God, I missed it. It was rich and deep. "So you must lead often." "Daily." He spun me out and pulled me back in, catching me hard against his chest. Our faces were inches apart. The playful banter died. The air between us charged with that static again. "You're dangerous," Cade whispered, his eyes searching mine. "I feel comfortable with you. It doesn't make sense. I should be wary. But holding you feels like..." "Like what?" I breathed. "Like gravity," he admitted. "Inevitable. Like no matter where I stand, I'm just going to fall toward you." My heart soared. He was feeling it. The bond was cutting through the fog. "Then fall, Cade," I whispered. "I'll catch you." For a moment, in the middle of a crowded room, we were the only two people on Earth. He wasn't the broken alpha, and I wasn't the stranger. We were just us. Then the music stopped. Chapter 9. The Almost Kiss. We left early. Neither of us said a word, but the air in the car on the way back to the main house was thick enough to choke on. The playfulness of the dance floor had evaporated, replaced by a heavy, suffocating hunger. Cade didn't drive to the front door. He stopped the truck at the edge of the driveway, near the trailhead that led through the woods to the house. "Walk with me," he said. We walked under the canopy of ancient oaks, the moonlight filtering through the leaves. The silence was loud. I could hear his breathing, jagged, uneven. Suddenly, he stopped. He grabbed my wrist and spun me around, pressing me back against the rough bark of a tree. "Cade?" "Quiet," he growled. He caged me in with his arms, leaning down so his face was level with mine. His eyes were dark pools of intent. "I can't take it anymore. All night. That dress. Your scent. The way you look at me like you know secrets about my soul." "I do know secrets," I whispered, my pulse hammering in my throat. "I don't care," he said roughly. "I don't care about the past right now. I don't care that I can't remember your favorite color or our wedding day. All I know is that right now, if I don't taste you, I'm going to go insane." He pressed his hips against mine. There was no mistaking his arousal. He was hard, hot, and desperate. "You want me?" he stated, his voice dropping to a seductive rumble. "I can smell it on you, Sarah. You're burning for me." "I always want you," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Then let me," he groaned. He leaned in. His lips brushed my jaw, sending shivers down my spine. He was going to kiss me. And God, I wanted it. I wanted to bury my hands in his hair and let him erase the last 3 weeks with his mouth. It would be so easy. We could fall into bed and for a few hours, everything would be fine. But it wouldn't be real. He was reacting to lust, to the bond's biological imperative. He wasn't kissing me. He was kissing the female who happened to be closest to him. He tilted his head, aiming for my lips. I slammed my hand over his mouth. Cade froze. His eyes snapped open, confusion and frustration warring in his gaze. He tried to pull my hand away, but I held firm. "No," I said. My voice was shaky, but the word was iron. I pushed against his chest, creating a few inches of space. Cade looked like I'd just slapped him. "No?" he repeated, his voice incredulous. "You just said you wanted me." "I do," I said, my chest heaving. "I want you, Cade, my mate, the man who knows how I take my coffee, the man who knows why I have a scar on my knee, the man who loves me." I looked at him, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "I won't be a warm body for you to use because you're confused and horny," I told him, stepping out from between him and the tree. "I'm not a scratch for your itch, Cade. I'm your wife." He stared at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "Sarah, I can't force the memories back. What if they never come? Are you going to deny us this connection forever?" "I'm not asking for memories," I said. "I'm asking for recognition. I want you to look at me and not see a stranger you want to sleep with. I want you to see me." I took a step back, wrapping my arms around myself against the chill of the night. "Don't touch me again," I whispered. "Not until you know who you're touching." I turned and walked away into the darkness, leaving him standing alone in the woods, stunned, frustrated, and, for the first time, completely unsure of himself. Chapter 10. The wolf takes over. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of heavy, pressurized silence that comes before a tornado touches down. I sat on the cold tile floor of the kitchen, staring at the moonlight filtering through the French doors. My hands were still shaking. I had walked away. I had walked away from the only man I had ever loved, leaving him panting and confused in the woods, because I had too much pride to be a placeholder for my own ghost. It felt like a victory for my dignity, but a crushing defeat for my heart. My wolf was pacing inside me, scratching at my ribs, whining that I had rejected our mate. "He doesn't know us," I told her. "He just wants a release." But God, I wanted him too. I heard the footsteps upstairs around 3 a.m., heavy, restless. Then, the sound of a door opening and the creak of the stairs. I didn't move. I stayed sitting against the cabinets, clutching a glass of water I hadn't taken a sip of in an hour. Cade appeared in the doorway. He was wearing low-slung sweatpants and nothing else. His chest was bare, a road map of scars I had traced 1,000 times with my fingertips. He looked wrecked. His hair was messy, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion, and his skin had a sheen of sweat like he'd just woken up from a fever dream. He stopped when he saw me. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "You're awake," he rasped. His voice was rough, scraped raw by sleep, or lack thereof. "Insomnia loves company," I murmured, taking a sip of the water. "Couldn't sleep?" "No." He walked into the kitchen, bypassing the fridge to lean against the island opposite me. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, mirroring my position. We were 10 feet apart, separated by the expanse of tile and a canyon of missing memories. "I keep seeing things," Cade admitted, staring at his bare feet. "When I close my eyes, it's not logical." "What do you see?" "You," he said simply. He looked up, his gray eyes piercing the gloom. "But not the you that fights in the ring, not the you that yells at me in the hallway. I see soft things. I see you laughing at a burnt piece of toast. I see you sleeping with your mouth slightly open." I let out a small, wet huff of laughter. "I do not sleep with my mouth open." "You do," he insisted, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "In the dream, you do. And I feel happy. I feel a peace I haven't felt since I woke up in that hospital bed. Then I wake up, and you're gone, and the peace is gone. And I just feel empty, I supplied. Starving, he corrected. I feel like I'm starving to death, and there's a feast right in front of me that I'm not allowed to touch. The vulnerability in his voice shattered the last of my anger. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was a man being tortured by his own subconscious. I slid my glass across the floor toward him. A peace offering. You're not starving, Cade. You're just forgetting how to eat. He caught the glass, staring at the water swirling inside. Tell me, he whispered. I need to know, not the facts, not the dates. Colt gave me the timeline. I know we got married 3 years ago. I know we live here. I don't care about the logistics. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Tell me something real. Tell me one thing about us that isn't in a file. I pulled my knees to my chest, resting my chin on them. I looked at the man who was my husband and a stranger all at once. It was the night of the solstice run. I began softly. About 6 months after we mated. We got separated from the pack during a storm. The river flooded. We were stuck in a cave for 12 hours. Cade watched me, unblinking. He was drinking in the words. I was terrified, I admitted. Not of the storm, but that I wasn't enough for you. That you'd eventually realize you wanted a Luna who was more diplomatic and less me. I was crying. I tried to hide it, but you heard my heartbeat. Cade shifted, leaning forward slightly. What did I do? You didn't tell me I was being silly. You didn't give me a speech about duty. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You took my face in your hands and you made me a promise. You said, Sarah, I don't need a diplomat. I need a partner. And I promise you this. If I am ever lost, I will find you. If I am ever broken, I will heal for you. And if I ever forget who I am, I will look at you, and I will know. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Cade looked as if I had physically struck him. He paled, his breath hitching in his chest. I said that? He whispered. You did, I said. And I believed you. Cade closed his eyes. He lowered his head, resting it on his knees. I saw his shoulders shaking. He wasn't crying. Alphas rarely did. But he was trembling with the force of the emotion hitting him. I broke the promise, he muttered into his arms. I forgot. No, I whispered, standing up and walking over to him. I didn't touch him. I just stood near him, letting him feel my presence. You didn't break it, Cade. You're just still in the process of keeping it. He looked up at me. His walls were gone. In that moment, he didn't look like the cold stranger. He looked like the man who had loved me. I want to keep it, he said, his voice fierce and cracked. I don't remember saying it, but God, I want to be the man who said that. Chapter 11, The Crack in the Wall. The morning sun brought a tentative truce. After our 3 a.m. confessional, Cade hadn't miraculously regained his memory, but the hostility was gone. He looked at me with a cautious curiosity now, like I was a puzzle he was desperate to solve. I found him in his office around 10 a.m. He wasn't looking at pack reports or topographic maps. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, his phone connected to the desktop computer, scrolling. Knock, knock, I said, leaning against the doorframe with 2 mugs of coffee. I come bearing caffeine, and before you ask, yours is black with 2 sugars. Cade looked up. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. Come in. He took the mug I offered, his fingers brushing mine. This time he didn't pull away from the static shock. He let it spark between us, watching the contact with intense focus. What are you doing? I asked, gesturing to the screen. It was filled with thousands of thumbnails. Photos. Investigating, he said, turning the monitor so I could see. Colt said I should let it come naturally, but I'm done waiting. I'm studying. My heart squeezed. He was looking at us. There were photos of our wedding, photos of us hiking, selfies where I was making a hideous face and he was kissing my cheek. But it wasn't the photos that had him captivated. It was the texts. He had a document open where he had exported our chat history. "I text you a lot," he noted, sounding baffled. "In the middle of the day, about nothing. I sent you a photo of a squirrel last year with the caption, 'This guy looks like Colt.'" I laughed. "I remember that. You were supposed to be in a budget meeting." "And here," Cade pointed to a long block of text from 2 years ago. "I wrote this on our anniversary. Sarah, you are the anchor that keeps me from drifting. I love you more than my next breath. If the world ends, I only want to be standing next to you." He read the words out loud, his voice detached, as if reading a poem written by a stranger. "It sounds like me," he said quietly. "The cadence, the vocabulary, it's my voice, but the emotion..." He looked up at me, bewildered. "I loved you. Obsessively." "You did," I confirmed. "And I loved you right back." "I was happy," he murmured, scrolling down. "Look at my eyes in these pictures. I don't look like the Alpha. I look free." You were. The moment was fragile, a delicate bridge being built over the chasm of his amnesia. And then, the door swung open. Mira breezed in. She didn't knock. She was wearing a tight pastel dress and carrying a stack of files, looking officious and important. "Cade, I have the patrol." She stopped when she saw me standing by the desk. Her smile faltered, then turned brittle. "Oh, Sarah, I didn't know you were interrupting." "I'm not interrupting," I said coolly. "I'm his wife. I live here." Mira ignored me, turning her beam on Cade. "I brought the updated rosters, and I was thinking, since you're still getting your bearings, maybe we could go over the lunar ceremony preparations. I've handled them before, back when... well, before." She laid a hand on his desk, leaning forward. It was a subtle move, meant to draw his attention away from the screen and toward her, toward the familiar past. Cade looked at her hand. Then he looked at the screen, at the text message declaring his undying love for me. Then he looked at me. "Mira," Cade said. His voice was flat. "Yes, Alpha?" she purred. "Why did you tell me Sarah was difficult?" Mira froze. I was just being honest, Cade. Everyone knows she's intense. I just wanted to protect you from undue stress." "I'm reading my own words here," Cade tapped the screen. "I don't sound stressed. I sound completely devoted. In fact, I seem to prefer her intensity to anything else." "Cade, you're confused," Mira laughed nervously. "Those are old messages. People change." "My wolf doesn't like you," Cade said. It was blunt, brutal. Mira recoiled as if slapped. "Excuse me?" "When you walked in," Cade said, standing up. "My wolf didn't react. He doesn't care about you. But when she walks in," he pointed at me, "he wakes up. He paces. He wants her." He walked around the desk, placing himself between Mira and me. A physical shield. "You're lying to me, Mira," Cade said softly, dangerously. "You're trying to rewrite a history that I might have forgotten, but I kept the receipts." He gestured to the computer. "Get out of my office." Mira turned red, then pale. She glared at me with pure venom, turned on her heel, and stormed out. Cade let out a long breath and turned to me. "I assume she's been a problem for a while?" "Since preschool," I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Thank you." "I trust my gut," Cade said, looking at me with a newfound respect. "And my gut says she's a snake, and you're..." He stepped closer, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered on my cheek. "You're the anchor," he whispered, repeating the words from the text. He leaned in. The air crackled. He was going to kiss me, and this time it wasn't just lust. It was discovery. Wow! The sound ripped through the air, shattering the moment. A high-pitched mechanical shriek that vibrated the glass in the windows, the perimeter siren. Cade pulled back, his eyes snapping from soft gray to alert, combat-ready steel. "Breach," he barked. "Sector 4. Chapter 12. The Attack. The peaceful morning detonated into chaos. The siren wailed like a dying god, triggering an instinctive panic response in every wolf in the territory. But we didn't panic. We mobilized. "Colt!" Cade roared as we sprinted into the hallway. Colt was already running toward us, radio in hand. "It's a massive breach," Colt yelled over the siren. "Northern Ridge, rogues, at least 20 of them. They disabled the sensors and crossed the river." 20. That wasn't a raiding party. That was an invasion. "Get the elders and the pups to the safe room," Cade commanded, slipping seamlessly into alpha mode. "Warriors to the ridge, flank formation." He stopped, turning to me. For a second, I thought he was going to tell me to go to the safe room. I thought he was going to try to protect his fragile mate. I braced myself to argue. "Sarah," he said, his eyes hard, "you take the left flank. You're faster than Miller. Hold the tree line. Don't let them break through to the houses." He trusted me. He didn't remember loving me, but he remembered I was a soldier. "On it," I said. We split up. I shifted mid-stride as I hit the back door, my bones cracking and reshaping, fur bursting through skin. I was a russet-colored wolf, smaller than the males but quicker. I hit the dirt running, my paws tearing up the earth as I sprinted toward the northern ridge. The smell hit me first. Rotting meat, unwashed fur, rogues. I crested the hill and saw them. They were a motley crew of exiled wolves, mangy and desperate, tearing into our patrol line. The sound was a cacophony of snarls, yelps, and the wet tear of flesh. I didn't hesitate. I launched myself at a gray rogue who was cornering a young sentinel. I hit him with the force of a cannonball, sinking my teeth into his shoulder. He howled, snapping back, but I was already gone, ducking under his guard to hamstring him. The battle was a blur of adrenaline and violence. I fought with cold precision the way Cade had trained me. Protect the pack. Hold the line. But amidst the bloodlust, I felt something else. A pull, a tether in the center of my chest. It was throbbing. I could feel him. I could feel Cade's rage on the other side of the ridge. I could feel the impact of his blows as if they were my own. The terror of the battle had ripped the dormant mate bond wide open. It wasn't just a trickle anymore, it was a fire hose of emotion. "Sarah," I heard his voice in my head. Not through my ears, in my mind. I faltered, stumbling over a root. "He heard me? Cade?" I projected the thought, screaming it into the mental void. "I can feel you," he roared back, his mental voice laced with shock and relief. "Stay focused." He was back in my head. The mind link, the deepest part of the bond, had reconnected. Distracted by the sudden psychic connection, I didn't see the second rogue. He was massive, a hulking brute with a scarred eye. He blindsided me, slamming into my ribs with the force of a truck. I went flying, crashing into a tree trunk. The air left my lungs in a pained wheeze. I tried to scramble up, but my back leg gave out, broken. The brute snarled, saliva dripping from his jowls, and loomed over me. 2 others joined him. I was surrounded. I snapped my jaws, trying to look dangerous, but I was cornered. I was hurt, and I was alone. "Sarah!" Cade's scream echoed in my mind, a sound of pure terror. I looked up at the ridge. Cade was there, in his massive black wolf form, silhouetted against the sun. He was looking down at me. He saw the rogues circling me. He saw the blood on my flank. He saw the inevitability of it. Time seemed to freeze. I looked into his golden eyes across the battlefield, and I accepted it. I was going to die. But at least he knew me. The rogue with the scarred eye lunged for my throat. Chapter 13. The trigger. The teeth never touched my skin. 1 second, I was staring down the gullet of a rogue wolf, smelling the rancid decay of his breath, accepting that my story ended here in the dirt. The next, the world exploded in a blur of midnight fur and violence. A massive black shape slammed into the rogue with the force of a derailed freight train. The impact was so violent the ground shook beneath me. There was a sickening crunch of bone meeting superior force, and the rogue was actually launched 10 feet into the air, before crashing into a tree with a wet thud. Cade. He landed between me and the pack of rogues, his paws tearing deep gouges into the earth. He was a monster. I had seen him fight 1,000 times, but I had never seen him like this. He wasn't fighting with technique. He was fighting with madness. He was bigger than I remembered, his fur bristling so hard he looked double his size, a void of darkness against the green forest. Mine. The word screamed through the bond, shattering the mental walls he'd had up for weeks. It wasn't a thought. It was a roar. And with that roar, the floodgates opened. I didn't just see Cade fighting, I felt him remembering. The bond, wide open and raw from the trauma, became a conduit. I gasped, clutching my broken ribs, as flashes of his memory superimposed themselves over my own vision. Flash. I saw myself in a white dress, laughing as I tripped over the hem. Our wedding? Flash. I saw the rain on the windshield of his truck, his hand gripping mine. The proposal. Flash. I saw the moment of the accident 3 weeks ago. I saw me screaming his name as the car spun. I saw his thought process in that split second. Turn the wheel. Take the hit. Save her. Save Sarah. He remembered. The realization hit me harder than the rogue had. The trauma of seeing me about to die had rewired the circuit. The block was gone. Cade let out a sound that wasn't a growl. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated fury. He lunged at the 2 remaining rogues. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. He moved faster than thought. He tore through them with a terrifying efficiency, fueled by 3 weeks of confusion and 3 years of terrified love. He was a whirlwind of teeth and claws, punishing them not just for attacking the pack, but for daring to touch what belonged to him. It was over in seconds. The rogues lay still. The silence that rushed back into the forest was deafening, broken only by the ragged, heaving breaths of the black wolf standing amidst the carnage. Cade stood there, his chest rising and falling like a bellows. He didn't look at the fallen enemies. He slowly, agonizingly, turned his massive head toward me. I was huddled against the tree, holding my side, unable to breathe for a different reason now. His eyes. They were glowing gold, bright as dual suns. But the confusion was gone. The cold, assessing stare of the stranger was gone. He took a step toward me, then another. He lowered his head, a low whine building in his throat. It was the sound of a creature in pain, not physical pain, but the agony of regret. Sarah. His voice in my head was clear. It was crisp. It was him. He didn't wait. He didn't check the perimeter. He closed the distance between us, collapsing to his belly and crawling the last few feet until his snout was pressing against my uninjured leg. He was trembling, vibrating with residual adrenaline, and the shock of his own mind piecing itself back together. I reached out, my hand shaking, and buried my fingers in the thick ruff of his neck. "Cade?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He looked up at me, and in those golden eyes, I saw everything. I saw the coffee orders. I saw the arguments. I saw the slow mornings and the fast nights. I saw the husband who had promised to find me. He had kept his promise. He had clawed his way back through the dark. But before he could shift, before we could speak, the adrenaline crash hit me. The pain in my ribs spiked white and hot, and the edges of my vision started to turn gray. "Stay with me, Firefly." His voice panicked in my mind. "Don't you dare close your eyes." He nudged my face frantically with his wet nose, licking the dirt from my cheek, desperate to keep me tethered to the waking world. Chapter 14. The Return. The transition from wolf to human is usually a gruesome, bone-cracking affair that polite society ignores. Cade didn't care about polite society. He shifted instantly. the black fur melting away to reveal the man I had married. He didn't care that he was naked. He didn't care that the rest of the flank patrol was breaking through the tree line, shouting orders. He only cared about the woman bleeding against the oak tree. "Sarah," he choked out. It wasn't the way he'd said my name for the last few weeks, like a question or a foreign object in his mouth. He said it like a prayer. He said it like I was the oxygen in his lungs and he had been holding his breath for 21 days. "Hey," I wheezed, trying to smile, though I'm sure it looked more like a grimace. You're late." "I know," he gasped, his hands hovering over me, terrified to touch where I was hurt. "God, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He cupped my face, his thumbs wiping away the tears and dirt. His eyes were frantic, scanning every inch of me, cataloging the damage. "My ribs," I whispered. "And my leg. I think it's broken." "I've got you," he swore. "I've got you, baby." He turned his head, spotting Miller and the other sentinels rushing up the hill. "Medic!" Cade roared. The authority in his voice was terrifying. It wasn't just the Alpha commanding his troops. It was a husband commanding the universe to stop hurting his wife. "Get the healer! Now!" Miller skidded to a halt, eyes widening at the scene, the dead rogues, the naked Alpha, the injured Luna. He scrambled for his radio. Cade turned back to me, his forehead dropping to rest against mine. He was shaking. The invincible Alpha King was shaking like a leaf. "I remember," he whispered against my skin, his breath hitching. "I remember the coffee. I remember the cave. I remember the dress you wore the night I claimed you. It was blue. It was blue silk." A sob broke free from my chest, sharp and painful. "You remembered." "I never forgot," he said fiercely, pulling back just enough to look me in the eyes. "My mind broke, Sarah, but my soul was screaming your name every second of every day. That's why I was so angry. That's why I hated everything. Because it wasn't you." He leaned down and kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It tasted of blood, sweat, and desperation. It was a reclaiming. It was a stamp of ownership. He kissed me like he was trying to breathe his own life into me. I kissed him back with everything I had left, tasting the salt of his tears and mine. When he pulled away, his gray eyes were swimming. "I told you," I whispered, lifting a weak hand to touch his jaw. "I told you I'd introduce myself." "You did." He let out a wet, jagged laugh. "You stubborn, impossible woman. You made me fall in love with you all over again. Do you know how terrifying that is? To fall for a stranger when you think you're married to a ghost?" "Sounds complicated," I murmured, my vision starting to swim again. The pain was dulling into a heavy, warm numbness. That wasn't good. "Sarah?" Cade's voice sharpened with panic. "Sarah, look at me." "I'm tired, Cade," I admitted, my head lolling against the bark. "Just gonna rest my eyes." No. He slid his arms under me, mindful of my ribs. "You are not sleeping. You are going to stay awake, and you are going to let me grovel for the next 40 years. You hear me? That's an Alpha order, Seraphina." He lifted me effortlessly. The movement sent a spike of nausea through me, but I felt safe. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt completely, utterly safe. 40 years? I mumbled into his chest. "That's a lot of groveling." "I'll do 80, he swore, starting to run back toward the main house, ignoring the patrol, ignoring the protocol. "I'll do forever." I rested my ear against his chest. I heard his heart. It was beating a frantic, thunderous rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. It was the same rhythm I had fallen asleep to for 3 years. It was the rhythm of home. "Cade?" I whispered, my voice fading as the darkness crept in at the edges of my mind. "I'm here, Firefly. I'm right here. Don't forget me again." I felt his arms tighten around me, iron bands of protection. "Never," he growled, a vow carved in stone. I'd burn the world before I let you go again." The last thing I felt was the warmth of his skin and the vibration of his voice before the gray turned to black, and I let myself drift away, knowing that when I woke up, the stranger would be gone and my husband would be waiting. But as I slipped under, I heard one last thing. "Colt!" Cade was screaming, his voice sounding far away. "She's passing out. Tell the healers if she doesn't wake up, I'm burning this hospital to the ground." Typical, always so dramatic. I smiled into the darkness. He was definitely back. Chapter 15. The Double Love. Waking up in a hospital bed for the second time in a month gave me a profound sense of déjà vu. The smell was the same: sterile lemon and aggressive antiseptic. The beep of the monitor was the same annoying rhythm. The stiffness in my limbs was familiar. But everything else was different. In Chapter 1 of this nightmare, the room had been cold. The air had been thin. The man in the room had looked at me like I was a tax auditor. Now, the room was practically vibrating with heat. I cracked one eye open. Cade was there. He wasn't sitting in the chair across the room. He was sitting on the edge of the mattress, his hip pressed against my uninjured leg. His head was bowed, his forehead resting on our joined hands. He looked like he hadn't slept, showered, or blinked in 48 hours. He had a beard coming in, the dark, scruffy kind that usually meant he was on a warpath. "You look terrible," I croaked. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sandpaper. Cade's head snapped up. His eyes, stormy gray, full of recognition, full of me, locked onto mine. "You're awake," he breathed. He didn't flinch away this time. He leaned in, burying his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. Thank the goddess. I was about to start threatening the doctors again. "I heard you," I whispered, lifting a hand to weave my fingers through his messy hair. "You threatened to burn the hospital down." Very dramatic. "It was a valid tactical option," he mumbled against my skin, his voice thick with emotion. "You were out for 2 days, Sarah. 2 days of silence. I hate the silence." He pulled back, just enough to look at me. His thumb traced my cheekbone, reverent and gentle. "I know you," he whispered. It was the reversal of the sentence that had broken my heart. "I know you, Serafina. I know your middle name is Rose. I know you hate the color yellow. I know you broke your arm when you were 12 falling out of a tree because you wanted to prove you could climb higher than Colt." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "You've been studying." I remembered. He corrected fiercely. "It's all back. Every second, every argument, every kiss." He reached for the bedside table. "And I know you take your coffee black with 2 sugars, but the doctor said just water for now." He held the straw to my lips. It was a small act, but it broke me a little. The stranger was gone. My partner was back. 2 weeks later, I was starting to regret being so injured, purely because Cade had turned into the world's most overbearing nursemaid. "Put that down," Cade commanded, walking into the bedroom. I froze, holding the laundry basket. "It's laundry, Cade. It weighs 3 pounds. My ribs are bruised, not made of glass." "Drop it," he said, using his alpha voice. He walked over, took the basket from my hands, and set it on the floor. Then he scooped me up bridal style. "Cade," I laughed, swatting his chest. "I can walk." "I prefer carrying you," he said simply, walking toward the bed. "It minimizes the risk of you escaping." He deposited me gently onto the duvet and sat down beside me. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the room. Our room. He had moved all my things back in before I was even discharged. The room smelled like us again, sandalwood and vanilla. He stayed sitting there, his hand resting on my knee, looking at me with a contemplative expression. "What?" I asked, leaning back against the pillows. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about the last month, about the man I was when I couldn't remember you. I try not to think about him, I admitted. He was kind of a jerk. He was, Cade agreed. But he fell in love with you too. I paused. He was lusting after me, Cade. There's a difference. No. Cade shook his head, his eyes intense. It wasn't just lust. I felt it, Sarah. I was confused, yes. I was angry that I couldn't control it. But every time you walked into a room, I felt complete. I didn't have the memories, but I had the instinct. I chose you. Again. He picked up my hand, kissing the knuckles one by one. I fell in love with you twice, he whispered, his voice rough. Once when I was whole years ago, and once when I was broken. When I was a blank slate with no history to guide me, I still looked at you and said, her. That one. She's the only one. My heart swelled, pressing against my healing ribs. It was a beautiful, terrifying thought. That our bond wasn't just a product of our history, but a fundamental law of the universe. Put us in any timeline, any circumstance, erase our memories, and we would still collide. So, I teased softly, trying to lighten the heavy emotion in the room. Which one of you loves me more, the old Cade or the new Cade? Cade smiled, a devastating, genuine smile that reached his eyes. They're the same man now, he said, leaning over me, bracing his weight on his forearms. But I think I like the new version better. He knows what it's like to almost lose you. He knows that memories are a gift, not a guarantee. He lowered his head, his lips brushing mine. I'm never going to stop earning this, Sarah. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that I know you. I see you, and I am yours. I think you've done enough groveling for 1 week, I whispered, pulling him down. Now shut up and kiss me, Alpha. He obliged. And as he kissed me, deep, slow, and full of 1,000 recovered memories, I knew we were going to be okay. We had survived the silence, we had survived the stranger, and now we had forever to remember why we belonged together. I love you, he murmured against my mouth. I know, I smiled. I know.